I've been teaching by guided inquiry for over 20 years. I've been providing materials for other teachers and conducting professional development workshops for 17 or 18 years. And more than 3,000 teachers from around the United States and some foreign countries as well have purchased my materials. And now what I'm going to do is walk you through a short professional development session similar to ones that I've done at multiple National Science Teachers Association conferences. It'll only take a few minutes to see how I've used guided inquiry in my science classes for more than 20 years. So the first thing I do is I introduce the topic. Today's topic is Vierlong Proteins. I know you're thinking, what? Vierlong Proteins? Never heard of it. That's okay. All right. If you were a class of students, I would explain why Vierlong proteins are so important. I would maybe give an example or two from the real world. I'd also state that the goal of this assignment would be to teach you structural characteristics of Vierlong proteins and also show you how to identify them. And if you have not printed out the Vierlong protein worksheet, please pause the video now, print the worksheet, and spend just a few minutes answering. There's only 4 questions. I'm sure you can do it. I'm assuming you did indeed pause the video and that you have answered the questions. So now, the typical guided inquiry assignment will take longer than the assignment you just did. All right. Most of my students will spend the entire class period working, and in fact, they're still working at the buzzer, or when the bell rings, and they will be shocked. Wow, time just flew by. That is quite different than if you're lecturing and they're like, when is this going to end? When is it going to end? No, they've spent the entire class period. Sometimes they debate with each other, like, no, I think for question 3 I put this. And it's great. You can see the learning happening. But it takes them most of the class period, and sometimes they will need to finish up a few questions at home. While they're working, I circulate around the room and I help them. Maybe I see if they have any misconceptions that they're writing down, because some of this they are trying to figure out from diagrams or charts or whatever, and sometimes there are some misconceptions. And so sometimes I need to say, double check number 3. Sometimes I help point them in the right direction. But I never give them the answers. All right. And while they work, I circulate around, but I also go back to my desk, and maybe there's some grading I need to take care of. Maybe there's a lab that I'm prepping or a demo. I can work while they're working. Instead of being up front and writing on the board and doing all this stuff and telling them everything, they're working. They're figuring it out. And that gives me some free time. I can work. I can get other stuff done. And then I pause my stuff and go circulate around, make sure that they're getting it. And it's great. It's a win-win situation because it's a huge time saver for me and it helps them learn better. Sometimes students finish it during class, but they often need to finish it at home. So it's the next day they bring their assignments in. So pretend it's the next day now. You bring in your Vierlong protein sheet and we decide, all right, we're going to go over it. From yesterday's watching you work, I know which questions most students struggled with. I know what the common misconceptions were, and we can talk about those. Okay, we go over it. And anything that was extra tricky, we talk about. So let me walk you through the assignment and show you exactly, even though you've already done the Vierlong protein worksheet, let me show you how it's constructed and the specific features of the assignment and the rationale for how I did it. With question number 1, the students have to look at what structural characteristics are required for something to be a Vierlong protein. And we see that each of them in figure 1 have 4 segments. They each have 4 segments. Some of them in figure 2 have 4 segments, but some do not. So this one has 4 segments in figure 2. So does this one. However, in figure 1, we see that they all have a circular, I'll call it a globule. And all of the globules in figure 1 are either striped here and here, or they are like dotted there and there. Okay, so it looks like even though this one has a dotted globule in figure 2, it has too many line segments. It has 5 line segments. So a Vierlong protein needs to have a striped or a dotted globule and 4 line segments. That's what they should get for question 1. Now, when they look at question 2 then, which one of these would be classified as Vierlong proteins? Well, they need to have 4 segments, and they need to have a striped or a dotted globule. So this one qualifies. The second one has too many segments. The third one has enough segments, however, this is not a striped or dotted globule. So the third one does not work. This one does. And we see that here there's only 3 line segments, so that doesn't work either. So only the 2 I circled in red count for a Vierlong protein. Now if we move on to question 3, we see that we've got Vierlong proteins. Dry is a German number. Well, look at this. Notice that they all have the correct striped or dotted globules, but they all have 3 segments, every single one of them. So we can conclude from this that the German 3 must be the number 3. And here, by the way, German 4 is 4, so it's Vierlong protein. I made it up. But in question 4, S and D, I just make S stands for stripes and D stands for dots. And the following is a D Vierlong protein. And so, given this information, go up and circle all the S Vierlong proteins and put a box around the D Vierlong proteins. Okay, so here's a D Vierlong protein. D stands for dots, and the S stands for stripes. So we can go back up, and what did it say? It said to circle the S and box the D. So we can circle and box. And that pretty much does it. And that's the Vierlong protein worksheet in a nutshell. You probably figured out Vierlong proteins are not real, okay? So do not teach Vierlong proteins to your students. They don't exist, okay? But I had to have a topic that nobody knew about, so I made it up, okay? But that is how, that's just how guided inquiry works. It's so much better than taking notes. Can you imagine giving notes? You know, Roman numeral 1, you know, structural characteristics, and they have to copy it down. Oh, so much better for them to figure it out. It's more fun. They like it better. So keep on reading down the page, and I'll give you another example of a real guided inquiry worksheet. Check out that video too and see how a real guided inquiry worksheet is constructed.